actually couldn't find good information on using ATMs in India before we went on our trip, so I thought it may be helpful to share some of our experience with using the ATMs. We were in the Golden Triangle area of India, so Delhi, Agra, and Jaipur. So we heard that cash scarcity was a problem, that some ATMs may not have the cash, but in those large cities, that was not a problem for us. But you should be aware that I had seen that problem or heard about that problem before we left, but again, it wasn't for us. Most places, many places did take credit cards, especially some of the nicer restaurants and at some of the shopping locations, they would take credit cards. So we actually didn't need that much cash, actually, but it is very much a cash-based economy, and they do a lot of mobile pay as well, so that could also be an option for you. But this is focused on ATMs and how we use them. And I've got a couple of videos, but before I show the videos of what the screen interface looks like, and it's very simple, it's a standard interface, I'll walk through the conversions that I experienced and I had from my use of the ATM. So at the time of our trip, it was 82.53 rupees to $1 US. So these will all be in US dollar amounts, and you can convert them to other currencies if needed. And just as a disclaimer, I know there are banks that will do much lower or lower or no ATM fees, but we generally don't have a lot of ATM fees in a year, even with our international travel. So far, I haven't gotten one of those, but there are other options to reduce some of these costs. So keep that in mind as we go through it. So based on that rate, 10,000 rupees would be equal to $121.17. But the important thing is there's a limit of 10,000 rupees per transaction. So it will let you plug in higher amounts than that, but then it'll tell you that the transaction won't work. So you need to know that there were signs in most of the rooms or at the ATMs that I used, and I was told that there was a maximum of 4 withdrawals per day. I did see other information that it was 2. So just keep that in mind, that if you need a large amount of cash in rupees, it may take you multiple days or multiple cards to get the full amount you need. So just make sure you're planning for that if that's something you need. And of course, these are things that could change, but this is what it was when we had our trip. For one example transaction where I was withdrawing 10,000 rupees, looking at my bank account, the cash amount was 123.75. So a little bit worse of a conversion rate than what the kind of spot price was for that day. And then there was a transaction fee for that particular ATM of $1.21, and then my bank charged 75 cents per use of the ATM. So that total transaction, 10,000 rupees, ended up costing me $125.71. And so essentially that's a 3.5% premium on what that spot price was. And for me, that wasn't an insurmountable amount, because we were, again, paying for larger transactions and a lot of the meals that we had in restaurants with credit cards. So I knew this going into it, that we would pay some amount in ATM fees, but it was an acceptable amount for us. And again, there are other cards that will reimburse you for ATM fees if you want to look for those kind of cards. The main thing I want to point out, though, is we did decline the conversion that the ATM was offering us, because it was offering me the option to withdraw at a total cost according to what was on the screen. And if you watch the further video clips that I will include, you can see those amounts. But they said for $132.54 using their conversion fees is what we could withdraw the 10,000 rupees for. So it still worked out much better in our favor to decline that conversion and let our bank do that conversion amount instead of the ATM doing that. So I hope this was helpful for you. I do think the big thing to keep in mind is, at least as of now, the limit per transaction is 10,000 rupees with a maximum of 4 withdrawals per day. And I did read a lot, I guess, particularly probably the more rural you go, some of the ATMs may not have cash in them. So you may want to make sure, if you're in a larger city and going to a smaller smaller city, that you do those withdrawals before you leave those larger cities.
Please wait, we are processing your transaction. Please do not move your card until prompted. Please wait while your transaction is processing. Please wait while your transaction is processing. Please connect your card first, then cash will be dispensed.
Please cover the keypad while entering your PIN. Please cover the keypad while entering your PIN.
Please
Please
wait while your
cover the
transaction is
keypad.
processing.